Thank you, Madam President. I'm here to present SB 620, which would allow the court to use judicial discretion when applying firearm sentence enhancements at the time a person is convicted of committing a felony. This is consistent with other sentence enhancement laws and retains existing sanctions for serious crimes. As a result of committing a felony, an individual will serve a long sentence. These sentence enhancements only make a long sentence even longer. They can add as much as 25 years to life to a sentence given for committing a felony. Research shows that prosecutors are more likely to charge people of color with mandatory sentence enhancements than their white counterparts, even if the crime is the same. Data for California incarceration rates show that 1,767 African Americans to 201 whites to 385 Latinos are incarcerated per 1,000 of the state's population. That's correct. If you're black, you're 8 times more likely to be incarcerated than your white counterpart. These enhancements cause serious problems. They create disproportionately increase racial disparities in prison, and they greatly increase the population of incarcerated persons. In 1994, the legislature approved 3 strikes and you're out, a law, and an increased prison terms for certain felonies in response to the terrible kidnapping and murder of 12-year-old Polly Klaas. Before 3 strikes law was amended in 2012, it resulted in a life prison sentence for minor crimes, including petty theft, simple drug possessions. In 1997, the legislature passed Use a Gun, You're Done law. The law was proposed by the father of Kimber Reynolds, who was murdered in 1992. This law significantly increased and mandated sentence enhancements for possessing a gun at the time of committing a specific felony. A judge had no discretion in applying this enhancement. If a gun was used, the judge must apply it. These enhancements, once again, only makes a long sentence even longer. Studies of these enhancements show that increasing an already long sentence does not in any way deter the commitment of a crime. SB 620 does not get into the debate about whether or not an enhancement works, because it does not work, and we do not eliminate those enhancements. SB 620 does not suggest that a judge should disregard the enhancements. Instead, SB 620 allows a judge to exercise his or her discretion on whether or not to extend an already lengthy sentence if it's in the interest of justice. SB 20 does not change the length of a sentence for any individual convicted of a felony. Let me state this again. SB 620 does not change the length of a sentence of any serious felony. SB 620 only allows the judge to use his discretion in the interest of justice and in exercising this discretion. Heinous crimes will not avoid these enhancements. California District Attorney Association opposes SB 620 because some individuals become eligible for parole if a judge does not apply these enhancements. They specifically point out that assaulting a peace officer with a firearm is not currently in the definition of a violent crime or felony under Penal Code 667. I deeply respect the law enforcement and seriously appreciate their concern. There is no way that we can be silent on those who serve to protect who are harmed in the line of duty. A judge will and should consider the circumstances of the crime committed and the history of the perpetrator and deal with the individuals appropriately. I do not believe that just because a judge can exercise discretion that they will reduce a sentence in any case. This is not what this bill does, and again, nothing in this bill prevents a judge from imposing the enhancements currently laid out in state statute. It moves the decision, I should say, about sentencing from one that is rigid and without meaningful benefit to one that is specific to the circumstances that were committed. And on that note, I would respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Bradford. Members moving to discussion and debate. Senator Stone.
Thank you, and good morning, members. This bill is pretty simple, and it's pretty dangerous. What this bill does is clear. It decreases the punishment against the most violent criminals who use guns when they commit their crimes. How many times on this floor have I heard people talk about how guns are a public health crisis? We've passed countless bills that would take guns away from law-abiding citizens. We've passed bills to regulate the number of guns that people can buy. We've passed bills to regulate how much ammunition people can buy. We've passed bills to do everything we can to make it more difficult for law-abiding citizens to purchase and possess legal firearms used for self-defense and for sporting purposes. But now, with this bill, we're trying to reduce the punishment for criminals who use a gun when they commit a crime. When will this hypocrisy end? Under this bill, if somebody robs a bank and shoots someone but didn't mean to kill them, the sentence could be only 2 years in prison. That's outrageous. It's wrong and it's hypocritical. Just consider some of the cases in Riverside County that would have been affected if this bill were in law today. Not too long ago, we had a number of migrant farm workers that were kidnapped. They were robbed at gunpoint and they were shot. The people arrested were convicted and sentenced to an added 25 years to life because they shot people during a robbery, migrant workers. This bill would have eliminated the ability to add this enhancement for shooting migrant farm workers. Another example, there was a serial robber in the Coachella Valley who now faces multiple enhancements because he used a gun in the commission of his crimes. Under this bill, that person would not only get 2 years of added time for his sentence for committing at least 5 robberies with guns, and he even shot one person. This is not a racial issue. It's a public safety issue. Anyone, regardless of race, who uses a gun in the commission of a crime is subject to a sentence enhancement, and we should keep it that way. We shouldn't reduce the penalties for people who use guns when committing crimes. If the author believes civil rights are being violated when these sentence enhancements are being imposed, why doesn't he call the Attorney General to initiate investigations? Why are we looking to protect criminals who choose to use guns when they commit crimes? Are we making our cities and counties more safe with this bill? I would opine that we're not. I find it just hypocritical that this body has shown a desire to make it harder for law-abiding citizens to purchase, own, and possess a firearm. But now we're reducing penalties for criminals who use guns when they rob, kill, and murder innocent victims. Members, please today show some sanity. Please show some consistency. I strongly urge a no vote on SB 620.
Thank you, Senator Stone. Senator Wiener.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in support of the bill. I want to thank the senator from Los Angeles for his leadership on this and on other important criminal justice reform issues. I think it's so important to keep in mind that this does not eliminate these enhancements. It simply gives the court discretion about whether to apply them. Right now, we have created a system in California that at times is so rigid with these enhancements that regardless of the circumstances of the case, regardless of whether a person can be rehabilitated, that person is sent away for such an extraordinarily long sentence that we're guaranteeing that that person's life is going to be ruined, that that person will never be rehabilitated, that that person's family will be torn apart. We should give our judges the discretion to be able to set an appropriate sentence. That is what this bill does. That is the good trend that we are seeing in this country in terms of sentencing reform, and I urge an aye vote on this item.
Thank you, Senator Wiener. Senator Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Madam President and colleagues. I have really been anguishing over this particular bill. I'm deeply conflicted. I didn't support it in public safety and have spent a great deal of time since then talking with the courts, talking with the criminal justice system, talking with both the prosecution and defense side, because this is, we are at a crossroads now where we are trying to reform our criminal justice system because, frankly, it has been an abject failure. Enhanced sentencing has done nothing but increase our correction system, taking money away from our schools, taking money away from prevention, taking money away from treatment, taking money away from the possibility that people can be rehabilitated and become quality contributing members of society. So I look at this measure and I support the notion that we should not tolerate the uses of firearm for illegal methods. And then I look at the gun epidemic that we have in this country, and I don't think anybody really disputes that we have far too much gun violence. So we have to take serious action, and I think we have, to prevent gun violence and to curtail the availability of firearms. I don't think there's anything debatable about this. Gun violence is a public health epidemic. And in this nation, there are over 30,000 people a year who die at the hands of firearms, whether they're little children who accidentally come upon a gun, whether it's people not knowing how to use them, whether it is in the commission of crime. So we have an epidemic. Every day, 48 children and teenagers are shot in murders, assaults, suicides, and suicide attempts, unintentional shootings, and police intervention. That is 48 children and teenagers per day in this country. Every day, 7 teens and children die from gun violence in this country. In America, 1 out of 3 homes with kids have guns. And nearly 1.7 million children live in a home with an unlocked and loaded firearm. Every day, 309 people in this country are shot in murders, assaults, suicide and suicide attempts, unintentional shootings, and police intervention. Every day, 93 people in this country die from gun violence. Millions of guns are sold every year, and no questions asked transactions, and estimates are by experts that 40% of guns now sold in America are done without a Brady background check. So we know that SB 620 will not reduce the proliferation of firearms or the use of firearms, nor will it further reduce or exacerbate gun violence. The notion that use a gun, go to prison would deter people from using guns has been a failure. It has resulted in more and more people spending more and more time in prison. So it hasn't worked. We talk tough. We've talked tough in our criminal justice system, and that hasn't worked. We need to reform that system. And at the same time, we need to take gun violence seriously. So I've been torn. This bill, however, contrary to what we've been hearing from the opposition, does not let people out of jail free. It just simply gives the discretion back to the courts. Most judges will add those enhancements. Mentioned by my colleague from the Inland Empire, that judge wouldn't, in his or her right mind, remove that enhancement from the crime that was described. But there are a few instances where the lack of discretion creates a situation that is unjust. And after all, are we not looking for justice in our system? We are looking for an effective way to deal with criminal behavior. So I believe that we are at a crossroads, and if we are serious about tackling criminal justice reform, we need to tackle this issue as well. In fact, I sat down and wrote 2 arguments. Was I going to support the bill or oppose the bill? I really haven't been sure, but since listening to this debate, I have to fall on the side of giving our judges the authority to exercise, based upon their knowledge, understanding of each case, the ability to decide whether or not to add the enhancements. Again, remember, no one's getting off lightly. If I thought for a minute that adding those enhancements would further protect the public, would further reduce gun violence, then I would support this, the existing inflexibility of the system. But that inflexibility hasn't worked. But we do need to send a message to people about the use and the proliferation of guns and the violence that it has wrought. So I am going to support this measure. I want to find a better way, a way that works, that is going to result in reducing gun violence. But what we have had for years has been a failure. I don't think you can argue that it hasn't. And we need to find a better way. It's my hope that this will open up the doors to that discussion and reduce the proliferation of firearms, which have created just a holocaust in our country by their usage. And with that, I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Jackson. Members, we're going to continue our discussion and debate, but before so, I'd like to recognize and welcome to the Senate floor former Assemblyman Kurt Hagman, current San Bernardino County Supervisor Kurt Hagman. Thank you for being here, Kurt. Senator Bates.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in opposition to SB 620. I am very concerned that we are going down the wrong road here. As a legislature, we continue to take away the rights of law-abiding gun citizens, yet at the same time, this bill seeks to reduce penalties on those using a gun to commit a crime. Additionally, as a woman, I cannot support a bill that gives discretion to remove enhancements when a gun is used for crimes such as rape, oral copulation, and sexual penetration. Women who are victimized of these crimes take years to recover, and some never do. Whereas the author's intent to focus on rehabilitating criminals, we must first ensure justice has been served when these are at issue. Lastly, as the District Attorneys Association points out, for some individuals, these additional sentences are the only thing keeping them from being eligible for early parole under Prop 57. I find this very problematic, and I think those victims of these kind of crimes would find that also. This just doesn't make sense, and I respectfully ask my colleagues to oppose SB 620. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bates. Senator Nielsen.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, when will this honorable body quit emboldening and empowering criminals to victimize our citizens, our families? When will we stop giving them more power by destroying the justice to the criminal justice system? I'm beginning to call it the criminal system in California now. This buddy years ago passed 10-20 life, and before that, use a gun, go to prison. That's serious. You have a gun, you go to prison. Where are the judges? Are they here today lobbying mightily for this authority and this discretion? Do they see it of critical value for justice in their courts to give them the power to strike enhancements? What are enhancements? Enhancements are a punishment for continued criminal activity and for escalating criminal activity. And the greatest escalation of criminal activity is using a gun. Where don't we get that? Ask the family of homicide victims, and they're tolling daily in this state. They're tolling daily in this state. And violent crime is going up in California. Crime is going up in California. For this wonderful criminal injustice reform that we've been doing here for about 5 years since AB 109, the sheriffs were in town and the police chiefs just this last week. They weren't coming and saying, oh my gosh, it's getting too easy out here. We've got to get tougher. They know what's going on in the streets. If you don't believe it, get out of your offices and your homes and your districts and get out on the line with your law enforcement professionals. Go around some of the crime neighborhoods where the young children have been killed by people who used guns. Again, where are the judges saying we need this new discretion? What is the discretion going to be based on? Oh, well, they had only nonviolent priors to this particular crime. We don't even know what the criteria would be for that. And to say that we're going to quit filling the prisons, this grand experiment in criminal justice destruction, as I call it, Has it resulted in money being redirected from the budget of California into other education and rehabilitation programs? No. Guess what? The Department of Corrections budget has gone up as tens of thousands of unrehabilitated felons have been released into our community, and it's been made immeasurably harder for them to be put back in for victimizing us. The cost has gone up. So where is that criminal justice dividend you so loudly speak for? Ladies and gentlemen, it is enough. These bills coming day after day after day, and all they are doing is enhancing the ability of criminals to victimize us. I urge a strong no vote.
Thank you, Senator Nielsen. Members, I'm just going to ask everyone to give their attention and be respectful of the member that is speaking. Senator Anderson.
Senators, with SB 620, our new California slogan is going to be, use a gun, gain compassion. If you're more concerned about felons who use guns in the commission of a crime than the victims of gun-wielding felons, vote for this bill. If you prefer punishing law-abiding gun owners than criminals who use guns in the commission of a crime, vote for this bill. Because I care more about the victims and law-abiding citizens, I cannot support a bill that goes soft on crime. And that's what this bill does. And that's why I'm urging a no vote. Our citizens, our constituents deserve better from us than encouraging people to use guns when in commission of a crime. I urge a no vote.
Thank you, Senator Mitchell, followed by Senator Skinner.
Thank you, Madam President. I've been a little confused by the debate this morning. I'm not sure how some of my colleagues on the floor can argue the right to bear arms. And when we look at the statistics in terms of, particularly when we talk about accidental shootings and when children are involved, and we look at when we look at the statistics, not the salacious cases that we read about or perhaps imagine, but when we look at California-based statistics and we see the circumstances under which many children fall victim to gun violence. And in many instances, it's a gun in the home. So I'm a little confused about how in one instance we want to throw the book at people who are engaged in firearm violence. And on the other hand, we don't want to engage in a thoughtful, strategic discussion about the kinds of guns that are available in our communities. So A, that confused me. B, I'm confused about the opposition argument that suggests that by voting to support the elimination of this enhancement somehow sends a signal that we support gun violence. It does not. This is one of 400 enhancements on the books in the state of California. And what this effort, as I understand it from the author, is merely trying to do is to re-empower the judiciary, the judges and members of the bench who hear the specifics of each individual case. Members of the bench who we entrust with upholding law, penal code, the Constitution, in doing their jobs. I'm not sure that we as policymakers on the grand scale are best equipped compared to the judges in determining what an appropriate sentence would be. And that's what this body and electeds before us have done in creating these arbitrary sentence enhancements. Who's to say that an additional 10 years is an appropriate amount of time? My vote in support of SB 620 today is my vote of confidence for members of the bench who are better equipped than we are here today, who will have evidence on specific cases that we don't hear today, and will be empowered to make their decision on a case-by-case basis about the appropriate sentence. To continue to use this generalized language about if we support this, that we don't support law enforcement is irresponsible and is a misrepresentation of the facts. So I am in tune with my community. I am in tune with the current California court system, as under-resourced as it is. I have toured my courts, talked to my judges, and I am clear that they have the capacity and are willing and able to do their jobs every day. And that's why I'll be supporting to again remove automatic arbitrary enhancements from California codes by supporting SB 620.
Thank you. Senator Skinner, did you want to speak? No? All right. Any further debate or discussion on this item? Seeing and hearing none, Senator Bradford, you may close.
Thank you, Madam President, and I want to thank the speakers both in support and in opposition of this measure. But let me address the false narrative of what I've heard. I don't own a gun, and I have never wanted to own a gun. So to imply that I'm empowering criminals who use a gun to continue on with heinous acts is the farthest thing from the truth. This bill gives our courts, men and women who we have elected and appointed to the bench, to use their discretion, just as we're given the right to use our discretion every day on this floor to move legislation forward, to decide whether or not an individual deserves this enhancement. This bill by no means removes those enhancements. But let me give you one example, and I would assure you, if this was your 17-year-old child, you would be fighting to make sure this enhancement was not imposed on your son. It was a 17-year-old, and he was riding in a car with his 18-year-old friend. The friend pulled over when he saw a group of people that he knew. The driver got out the car to talk to the group, ended up getting into an argument with them. The driver came back to the car and then drove away, but one of them shot out of the car and hit a member in the group. And both friends claim they didn't do it. The victim was released from the hospital within a few hours. The individual, who had no criminal history, his teacher said was a great student, was a member of the clergy, and his family testified to his character as someone who was a hardworking student who never known any reason to be in trouble, never got into any kind of trouble in his life. They gave this kid 30 years to life. And he didn't pull the trigger. The gun was used. They never determined who did the shooting. The judge, before the sentencing, ran to the mother of this child and apologized and said, "My hands are tied. Your son does not deserve this enhancement, but my hands are tied." And from the bench, he reiterated those same statements: "My hands are tied. I have to give your son 25 years to life." A 17-year-old who had never run afoul against the law in his entire life, and he did 25 years and still doing 25 years of life. Again, members, this does not diminish the sentencing of anyone who is a real criminal. Again, I don't own guns. I don't support the use of guns in any way, and I wouldn't encourage the lessening of the sentencing of anyone who had committed a heinous crime. All this bill does is give those judges the right discretion lives and families are destroyed when criminals commit crimes. Our justice system needs to be able to focus on making our streets safer, and I think this bill goes a long way in doing that. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Bradford. All debate having ceased, Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen. Aye. Anderson. No. Atkins. Aye. Bates. Bell. Aye. Berryhill. No. Bradford. Aye. Cannella. No. De Leon. Aye. Dodd. Fuller. No. Gaines. No. Gaggiani. Glazer. Aye. Hernandez. Aye. Hertzberg. Aye. Hill. Aye. Wesso. Aye. Jackson. Aye. Lara. Aye. Leva. Aye. McGuire. Mendoza. Mitchell. Aye. Monning. Aye. Morlock. No. Morrell. No. Newman. No. Wynn. No. Nilsson. No. Pan. Portantino. Roth. Skinner. Aye. Stern. Stone. No. Vidak. No. Wykowski. Aye. Wiener. Aye. Wilk. No.
Please call the absent members.
Bates, no. Dodd. Aye. Galgiani. McGuire. Aye. Mendoza. Pan. Aye. Portantino. Roth. Stern. Aye.
Ayes 22, noes 14. The measure passes.